Hello. I hope you're off to a great start to the weekend. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for spending some time with me. I appreciate it. Today I want to talk about a recent Bloomberg article, and the article was about the daily performance of the S&P 500 by day of the week. And it was a really interesting article. And I was reading the article, I go, I wonder how this correlates to mortgage-backed securities. I wonder if we can take the data that Bloomberg has for how the stock market is performing and learn something about interest rates. Now, before I get started, I have to clearly caution, this is only 6 weeks of data, and that's a very small data set. So it's not reliable, but it is a trend. And it's mostly a trend since the change of presidents. Good or bad, but we can kind of see how's the stock market behaving, how is the bond market behaving, and I think we can extrapolate some things. Now, they're not ironclad because it's only 6 weeks. So the name of the article is Trump Tariffs Spat Has Stock Dip Buyers Obsessed with Wednesdays. And what it's saying is that the annualized rate of return for the S&P 500 on Wednesdays this year, which is only 6 weeks, is 127%. So if all you did is buy the S&P 500 index at the beginning of the market on Wednesday and then sold it at the end of the day on Wednesday, and you did that every day this year, and the trend continued throughout the year, you'd have 127% return. Really interesting, right? And the article went on to say, look, Fridays have been really tough on the stock market. That's the average losses are very large on Fridays. And then Monday has been equally bad. And not only Monday is bad, but there's a gap opening down from Friday to Monday on average of about 63 basis points. So Friday, over the weekend, Monday bad. Then the stock market rallies Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so it says, look, the people that, their strategies that buy on the dip, they're the ones that are going to win. So if you just did that, if the trend continued, you'd have a great year investing. And so I go, wow, I bet that there's some correlation that we can find, we can extrapolate for mortgage-backed securities. And my expectation was completely wrong. It wasn't what you expected. And because what I thought is, gosh, okay, there's a flight to safety over the weekend, on Friday and over the weekend, Monday, and so that bond market should have a great day Monday and Friday, and then while the money ebbs back into the stock market, that the bond market has a tough midweek, right? And what that's called negative correlation, right? Negative correlation. So when the stock market goes up and the bond market goes down, meaning interest rates go up, that's negative correlated. It's doing the opposite. They're doing the opposite of each other, right? And historically, the bond market and the stock market are negatively correlated. One does well, the other one does poorly. It's pretty well balanced. Just think of it like a seesaw. Cash goes into one, it leaves the other. Vice versa, and so the prices seesaw. Right. And so, originally, being an old dog, I go, man, I bet that there is a negative correlation, and we can learn that we probably, could have rallies on, Friday through Monday. But you want to know something? It was exactly opposite. It was exactly opposite. The bond market was performing nearly exactly as the stock market because there's no longer a negative correlation. There's a positive correlation. And some of that makes sense, right? The reason why is right now, the fear of inflation or news of inflation harms both stocks and bonds. So the stock market goes down and the bonds worsen if there's a fear of inflation. Same thing with all this, geopolitical uncertainty, economic uncertainty. When we have a big news weekend, it affects now both bonds and in the stock market. And so they're very positive correlated. So the first thing we have to pay attention to is we have to be aware that there's no longer necessarily a negative correlation, that there's probably a positive correlation. And so we have to pay attention to news that isn't necessarily, you would think, bond friendly or, and stock unfriendly. We have to pay attention to which will move both markets and think of global uncertainty, economic uncertainty, and inflation. So think of those things. So now, let's take a peek at what the charts look like. It's really interesting, And then maybe we'll talk about some strategies on what maybe we can do given this trend. All right, so here's the article I mentioned: Trump tariffs, bats, stock dips, buyers obsessed with Wednesdays. You can see annualized return on Wednesdays is 127%. And then here's what the chart looks like right here. Pretty interesting chart. This is what caught my eye. Mondays on average are bad. Tuesdays get good. Wednesdays are exceptional. Thursdays are good. Friday is bad. Right? Makes sense. Now, so what I did is I went back and I mapped out mortgage-backed securities for the same thing. So here's our S&P 500 chart on the top. On the bottom, here's the annualized return by day for the mortgage-backed securities on the 30-year 6%, right? And this is only six weeks, right? Year-to-date 2025, but it looks pretty similar, right? Mondays are down, Tuesdays are slightly up, Wednesdays are up a lot, Thursdays are up slightly, Friday is way down. Now, a couple things you need to pay attention with this chart. First, it's not comparison bit for bit, because Mondays and Fridays have a lot more volatility than Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And you just got to think volatility equals risk, right? So Mondays and Fridays, even if it wasn't as big a differences, you still have a lot more risk on Mondays and Fridays. So that's the first thing. Now here's the thing. So okay, if we go Mondays and Fridays are bad, and by the way, on average, I think Mondays lose about 9 basis points on average. Friday loses about 14. So that's Monday to Friday, you're going to lose about, this year you've lost 24 basis points on average. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're gaining around the same amount, 15, 16 basis points, right? And with a lot of volatility though on Monday and Friday. All right, so if that's the case, if that's what the chart looks like, what do you think your locking strategy should be? All things being equal. Now, by the way, data, technicals should dominate your decision on locking. Listen to people like Barry Habib with MBS Highway. Listen to what they're saying. They're spot on. So I'm saying in the absence of any other indicator, of any other technical, right? In the absence of that, this might be a way you may lean, right? So if this year, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are improving days, Fridays and Mondays are worsening days, right? And once again, there could be all sorts of news that changes that. And this is a very small data set, but what would be your strategy? And it's interesting, the strategy probably needs to be probably locking at the end of the day Wednesday or right after pricing on Thursday, absent of any other news or any other technicals, is probably your best strategy. And you go, well, gosh, if Thursdays on average, the market improves by 2.5 basis points, why not wait till the end of the day? Well, the reason why is the volatility that affects Friday starts to seep back into back into Thursdays in the afternoon. And so you start to have risk as you float later into Thursday. And you probably want to avoid that risk by locking end of day Wednesday or right after pricing comes out on Thursday, which is probably your best strategy. And you probably don't want to play around with locking Thursday afternoons. And now, what happens if you get a deal over the weekend? You get a deal over the weekend, and let's say you don't have overnight protection. Or let's say I got a deal over the weekend, we got whacked on Friday, we lost 15 basis points on Friday. I might have a small gap opening down on Monday. I'm facing on average 9 basis points loss on Monday. When do I lock? Well, all things being equal, in absence of any information, you're going to gain about 15 basis points on Tuesdays and Wednesday. So if I got the loan on Monday morning, I'm not locking it until Wednesday night or Thursday morning after rate sheets come out, right? And probably if I get over the weekend, I might float to midweek. Now, once again, you got to pay attention to technicals. And news, don't misunderstand. If the jobs report is coming out, pay attention to it. If the CPI number's coming out, pay attention. You got to time it to that. But just in the absence of that, and I think this is really a fascinating way to look at it. So the key things here, I think, are pay attention to negative and positive correlation, how it's changing now. And if you think about it, think about this. Think how much this powerful news has come out over the weekends. We've had the news of tariffs. We've had the news of terrorist attacks in New Orleans. We've had plane crashes over the weekend. We've had a whole bunch of news over the weekends that's really moved the market. And then we have presidential tweets all market long, and not to mention Doge tweets all market long, and totally, destabilizing the news, making, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's adding a lot of volatility Friday through Monday. And so we may want to start, thinking that as part of our lock strategy. And if nothing else, it's food for thought and it's fun to talk about. So I did a lengthy article on this today in my LinkedIn. So if you go to my LinkedIn, you can check out the article. I will put a link to my article, and at least I'll try to put a link to the article in the notes below. If you go to my article, you'll also see I have a link to the original Bloomberg article, which you may or may not be able to access. It's behind a firewall. It depends on how many articles you pulled from them. But you can check out I did a thorough job encapsulating the information from Bloomberg. I extrapolated it into what it can mean for us in mortgage. I hope you found that useful. I hope you just found it, food for thought. I thought it was pretty interesting. I was surprised about the correlation, actually, quite frankly. Anyway, I hope you got something out of this. I hope you're having a great weekend. I appreciate you giving me some time. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks.